Irresistible desire, developments in technology that are addictive and keep us hooked. Author Adam Alter. Subtitles by freebooksummary. Introduction to Collegial progress is developing according to the famous Moore's law. Every day new devices and applications appear in our life. They make our lives efficient, but at the same time keep us firmly hooked. We are constantly monitoring how many likes and comments our Instagram or Facebook posts are garnering. We are glued to our screens watching the next season of a popular TV show or a series of YouTube videos, and before we know it, 3 to 4 hours have passed. We linger longer and longer at our desks to finish the next task on our endless to-do list. Even the non-urgent ones. We immerse ourselves in the magical world of online shopping and don't notice how we spend much more money and time than we intended. After the presentation of the first iPad, where Steve Jobs spoke for an hour and a half about the advantages of the new device, he said that his children have never used an iPad, so the creators of modern technology are technophobes. What scares them so much? The book tells about behavioral addiction in the modern world, tells about the origins of addiction as such, reveals its psychological causes and potential danger. From the book and the summary, you will learn about new types of behavioral addiction that emerged only decades ago, but have become a significant part of our daily lives. Adam Alter describes in detail the psychological tricks that make us go along with modern devices, and suggests ways to consciously reclaim the role of master and turn them into helpers. First, the origins of behavioral addiction. How much do you think the average modern person uses their smartphone? Kevin Holish, founder of the Moment app, also asked himself this question when he felt he didn't have enough time for his family. The app tracks time when the user is using the screen, checking email, using the internet. Time stops only for phone calls and listening to music. 3 hours. 3 hours a day the average person spends looking at a smartphone screen. Every month, almost 100 hours are spent on email, internet, mobile games, etc. Over the course of one human lifetime, this amounts to 11 years. Psychologists have even coined a term for this excessive smartphone use: nomophobia, or the fear of being disconnected. This problem doesn't just exist with smartphones. World of Warcraft, an online multiplayer role-playing game developed and published by Blizzard Entertainment, is an example of such addiction in the gaming industry. According to Popular Science magazine, this game is one of the strongest behavioral addictions in the world. Millions of registered users worldwide. Real-time players gather in teams and together complete a series of challenges in a virtual world. Where to find time to sleep if team members live in different time zones from each other? The problem of addiction has not bypassed the field of amateur sports. With the advent of smart sports watches and fitness bracelets, our every step, heart rate, and other indicators are recorded by the device. All this digital data becomes an obsession for many people today. I walk 10,000 steps. Tomorrow I need 1,000 more, then another 1,000, etc. People pursue new goals, sometimes without listening to their own bodies or paying attention to injuries. Similar tendencies can be seen in our behavior when shopping online, or when planning and organizing our time at work. There used to be physical barriers, 24-hour stores, or virtually non-existent. In order to complete an urgent project, you had to travel to work on the weekend, ordering a pass in advance. Now all you need is a computer and Wi-Fi. Is this a good thing? Scientists believe that behavioral addiction shows up at a very early age. At the age of 2 months, the vision of infants is not well developed enough to fully consider the objects around them. Yet their eyes focus on moving objects with a clear shape, such as simple wooden cubes. Psychologist Jerome Kagan called this a manifestation behavioral addiction to contour and motion. Does this mean that infants are addicted? Newborns can't look away from certain objects, just as any human being can't help but breathe or blink. Is this also an addiction? Addiction is always negative in nature. Behavioral addiction is the inability to resist an action that may bring short-term need satisfaction, but causes harm in the long term. There's also passion. This too is a kind of addiction, such as a hobby. But here we make a conscious decision to pursue our favorite activity and it enriches our lives. In the case of behavioral addiction, we act against our will, which can lead to unfortunate consequences. About 40% of the population has at least one behavioral addiction and often don't even realize it. Moreover, About 46% of people admitted that they cannot live without smartphones and would more easily survive a physical injury than a lack of connection. In 2008, the average person used their phone for 18 minutes a day, and in 2015 it was 3 hours. Constantly using gadgets, people get distracted more often and cannot concentrate on one thing for a long time. Productivity drops dramatically. According to Microsoft Canada, the average attention span of a person has decreased from 12 seconds in 2008 to 8 seconds in 2013. By comparison, a goldfish's attention span is 9 seconds. In 2013, psychologist Catherine Steiner-Adair said in her study on the impact of gadgets on children that most American children copy their parents' behavior in regards to gadgets. Adults are constantly on their phones or the internet. Children believe that this is an integral part of life, and by middle school, their social life smoothly shifts from real to virtual. Teenagers no longer communicate face-to-face. Even problems and disputes are solved in messages or messengers. All this negatively affects the ability to communicate in person, to show empathy, and leads to antisocial behavior. In the early 50s of last century, engineer Peter Milner and psychologist James Olds conducted an experiment that was revolutionary for the world of behavioral psychology. Rats were run into a cage, having had small stimulators connected to their brains beforehand. When the animals went to a certain corner of the cage and involuntarily touched a small lever, an electric current was switched on. Milner and Olds thought that with electrical stimulation of the brain causing unpleasant sensations, the rats would avoid that part of the cage. To their surprise, they found one rat that persistently returned to the lever and kept pushing it, forgetting about food, water, and rest until it died of exhaustion. Scientists wondered, what was so special about the dead rat? Maybe it had impaired brain function. In the end, it turned out that the electric shock stimulated a pleasure point in the brain, not a point of discomfort. The 2 points are very close to each other. The problem wasn't the nature of the rat. The rodent had simply become a victim of circumstance and was enjoying the electric shocks and becoming addicted. Stimulating this pleasure point is the basis of many addictions, and not just chemical addictions, drugs, alcohol. Despite the fact that internet addiction has not yet been officially recognized as a mental disorder requiring medical intervention, there are more and more rehabilitation centers around the world for teenagers for whom an innocent fascination with video games or social media grows into an obsession. They lose touch with the real world, destroy family ties, and even contemplate suicide. Organizers of such centers are sure that internet addiction is even more dangerous than alcohol and drugs, because the problem cannot be solved by completely avoiding the source of addiction. In modern life, it is impossible to stop using the internet altogether. More and more household and work functions are moving online. Addiction does not occur on its own. Most often it is preceded by a situation that causes psychological problems, depression, a feeling of loneliness. To solve them come to the rescue alcohol, food, drugs, video games, social networks. At this moment, the body produces the hormone of happiness, dopamine. For lack of other ways to solve problems and lack of other joys in life, a person becomes more and more immersed in his or her addiction. Second, the main components of behavioral addictions, biological component of chemical and non-chemical behavioral addictions are similar, but the latter have several distinctive features. The principle of their action should be understood in order to identify each in time and recognize the danger that lies in them, not to fall for such tricks again and again. Let's analyze in detail the hooks on which we are held. Goals. Amateur sports has recently developed by leaps and bounds. More and more people participate in various competitions. Take, for example, a marathon. A great goal. On the one hand, large scale, but if you divide it into parts, then quite realistic: run 5 kilometers, then another 5, etc. Goals make us more efficient, and when achieved, they also make us happier. Statistically, the number of people who finish a marathon within the round time marker 259, 328, 356 is much higher than a couple minutes later. Even when an athlete is very tired in the last kilometers, he or she is trying his or her best to get within that time frame, to run out of 4 hours, out of 3 hours, etc. A second breath arises from somewhere. This is the power of goal setting. But what happens when the goal is achieved? We set new goals, becoming addicted to the process. There is a running association in the US where members run every day without a break for years and even decades. No matter what weather, injuries, the goal is to not miss a day. A week without stopping is one thing, But if you've been running for a year or 5, that very fact becomes a kind of treasure, the loss of which leads to painful feelings. John Sutherland of California is a national record holder. He has been running every day for 46 consecutive years and has no intention of stopping. George Scott in his famous book Inbox Zero teaches us to process all incoming email as soon as possible, delete, categorize into appropriate folders. Inbox Zero has become a cherished goal for many, a symbol of productivity and control. As a result, 70% of all office emails are read within 6 seconds of receipt. It takes 6 seconds to read an email, and it takes 25 minutes to re-immerse yourself in the work you were distracted from. Just 25 emails a day, and there's no time left for maximum productivity. Goals are all around us, invading our lives, sometimes even against our wishes. Instead of making life easier, for many, goals become a source of added stress. Life becomes a race with no right to stop. To increase the number of Instagram followers, Facebook likes, the size of a bonus at work, the number of points in the Candy Crush Saga mobile game. Current achievements are instantly devalued when a new goal looms on the horizon or when a colleague, friend, neighbor has these metrics bigger and better, and life goes by unnoticed. Feedback. What do little kids do when they get into an elevator? They want to push all the buttons at once. They are little explorers. They are interested in how the world works. A person from a very young age is eager to get new knowledge from the world around him and the corresponding feedback, a response to his actions. A child in the elevator receives feedback in the form of light bulbs lighting. A pen satisfies his curiosity. The reason for the popularity of slot machines in casinos is the unpredictability of the outcome. According to psychological studies, people enjoy random rewards more than predicted ones. The Facebook team, creating a like button under each post or photo, was guided by this principle. No longer did you have to ponder what people thought of your photos. Feedback could be received in real time. Before the button was created, social media users would just log in from time to time, passively flipping through their friends' feeds. After the like button appeared, the network became interactive and even more popular. Just as in a slot machine you can't predict the winnings, Facebook users are intrigued by their friends' reactions every time. The act of clicking the like button at some point became part of public etiquette. Liking a friend's post became tantamount to laughing at their joke in a public place, to cheer them on. Interactivity is the basis of many computer games. The design is specifically designed to draw the player into their world. When the mouse cursor or finger moves on the tablet, a certain text or sound appears, making the player think he or she is in control of what is happening. A typical example is the popular mobile game Candy Crush Saga with revenue of up to $600,000 a day. The rules of the game are quite simple. The interface is bright and interactive, and with each correct action there are micro-incentives in the form of a text or voice message. Micro-incentives and interactivity are the strongest motivation to get hooked on the game. Another component of an addictive game is mandatory losses. The player must lose from time to time, but with a feeling of almost winning. Like in the famous Simpsons cartoon series, when Homer bought a lottery ticket, a scratch card, he erased one cell, the bell, the second, the bell, erased the third hopefully. Plum, Homer, disappointed, where were you yesterday? Even though he lost, the feeling of almost winning makes him buy those lottery tickets every day. Progress. Martin Shubik, an economist from Yale University, in 1971 offered his students a game. Dollar auction. The essence of the game is simple. A $1 bill with a minimum bid of 1 cent is offered to the public. The host gives the dollar to the one who offers more for it. But to pay will have to pay, and the one who offered the maximum price, and the second after him. If one person offers 80 cents and the other 70 cents, the former gets the whole dollar at a discount of 20 cents, while the latter loses 70 cents. At first the game is very simple and entertaining, but when there are only 2 voters left, neither of them wants to lose. Then the game continues even after the offered 100 cents on the dollar. The discounted dollar seems to be an easy and tempting catch, and the person does not notice how he or she gets involved in a losing situation. Many mobile games are built on a similar principle. The first few levels are simple and free, but at some point the complexity increases and there is an opportunity to buy access to the next levels by skipping the obstacle. The user starts the game to have fun and continues to play and pay to keep that fun. Increasing complexity in endless stream. People love complexity. Even with a plethora of books on how to make their lives easier, complexity remains very appealing. It's inherent in human nature. Many behavioral addictions and video games are built on this principle. One of the most popular computer games of the 1980s is Tetris. The essence of the game is to stack blocks of different shapes, avoiding gaps, and then the row disappears. The player loses when the screen is completely filled with blocks. The first level of the game is quite simple and slow, but then the speed and complexity of shapes increases, and with it the skills of players. Having been carried away by the game, Alexei Potsidnov couldn't finish the prototype for a long time, endlessly continuing to test it. The game was so addictive that even in their sleep players kept seeing falling blocks. In their imagination, the term Tetris effect even appeared in this connection. Tetris became famous all over the world and, in 1991, entered the Guinness Book of Records as the most successful video puzzle game. It is believed that children learn faster, and the material being studied is only slightly more difficult than their current abilities. Soviet psychologist Lev Vygotsky called this state the zone of proximal development. Besides the fact that children learn faster when they are in this zone, they also enjoy the process. This state is a so-called flow, in which a person is so engrossed that he or she even forgets about time. In the case of video games, this flow can go on indefinitely. In the modern world, the concept of a limiter has disappeared. It is a signal that it is time to finish one action and move on to a new one. Until recently, such limiters were everywhere. Read a magazine, put it aside, finished work, walked out of the office, and you don't do any work until morning. You watched an episode of a popular TV show, you wait a week for the next one. That's not the case now. An endless Facebook feed, Instagram, movies and shows on demand at any moment with an automatic switch to the next episode. Without a limiter, it's hard to make yourself stop when the process is so addictive. Cliffhangers. A cliffhanger, or cliffhanger ending, is an artistic technique in creating a storyline in literature or film in the course of which the hero faces a complex dilemma, the consequences of his or her own or others' actions, but at this point the narrative is cut off, leaving the denouement open until the continuation appears. The main feature of many popular TV series is the intrigue that the authors add at the end of the series or season to make viewers watch further. The incompleteness of the story is so annoying to the viewer that he or she eagerly waits for a new episode to find out the denouement of the story. With the advent of digital television, there is no need to wait for a week for the release of a new series. One can watch the sequel right now. In August 2012, Netflix added a post-play feature to its website that turned a 13-episode season of Breaking Bad into a 13-hour movie. When an episode ends, the next one automatically starts, unless we stop it on purpose. So, after going to watch one episode, we suddenly find ourselves watching the fifth. Online stores often use a similar trick. Guild, a popular online store in the United States, sells clothing from popular designer brands. Items are sold at a deep discount and only to users of the site. Users sometimes wait for weeks at a time to be registered. The low price only lasts for a day or two. Every day there are new offers that are impossible to refuse. The excitement makes many people want to enter the site like a private club, to become the lucky owner of a piece of clothing they may never even wear in their lives. The result is credit card debt and a house full of unwanted items. Social connections. The popularity of social media is due to human nature. Some people's opinions are much more important to some than others. But humans are social creatures and it's impossible to completely ignore what those around us think of us. People are obsessed with comparing themselves to others, and even more so with the fear of receiving negative feedback. There are more and more unhappy and dissatisfied people looking at beautiful pictures of their friends' happy lives on social networks. The main components of addictive computer games such as World of Warcraft or League of Legends are immersion, the feeling of accomplishing a feat, and socialization. Participants play in real time with real people. They go through various challenges together, trusting each other with their virtual lives. Such situations bring people together, and a true friendship is born. However, such purely virtual friendship lacks the important thing: physical face-to-face communication with other people, the most important survival skill in modern society. Recent psychological studies show that teenagers between the ages of 10 and 15 who played computer games for more than 3 hours a day are less satisfied with their lives. They are unlikely to empathize with real people, and more likely to not know how to deal with their own emotions. And if 3 hours a day seems like a lot of time to you, here are the results of recent surveys. Kids spend 5 to 7 hours a day in front of computer screens, tablets, and smartphones. Sir, what can be done to turn technology from enemies to helpers? We need to start at a very early age. Children in the modern world spend more time in front of screens and in live communication. They have a harder time resisting addiction than adults. Alcohol addiction is regulated at the state level. Computer addiction, on the other hand, is limited or not limited only within a single family. The American Pediatric Association recommends introducing children to screens only from the age of 2. 2 years of age is a critical age at which the social model of behavior used by children at 4. 5 years of age and beyond is laid down. But what to do if, for example, a young family with a child lives on the other side of the world? Then the opportunity to introduce grandparents to grandchildren is only through the internet. First, parents should explain the connection between what the child sees on the screen and the real world. If, for example, an application or educational program asks to assemble a house from cubes, then you can repeat the action with real cubes. The child will learn faster. Second, it is better to choose interactive programs instead of those that involve passive viewing. The child will learn to think, memorize, and make decisions. Third, it is important to let the child understand that the essence of the program is much more important than the media. When watching a cartoon, it is important for children to learn to analyze the story, characterize the characters, and make assumptions about future events based on the information they receive. In dealing with teens and social media, parents should be calm, realistic, wise, situationally aware, and willingly forthcoming. Overprotective and judgmental questions can alienate the teenager and consequently provoke psychological problems that often lead to internet addiction. Most addicts are victims of circumstance. A well-organized environment will avoid the emergence of addictive behavior and help develop healthy constructive habits. Charles Duhigg in his book The Power of Habit identifies 3 main components of habit: signal, what provokes the action; routine, the action itself; and reward, what makes the brain repeat the action again. To break a bad habit, it's important to maintain the signal and reward by changing the routine. In 2014, the company of others released a product they called Realism. It's a plastic object, similar in image to a smartphone, but without the screen. Instead of constantly looking at your phone screen while having dinner with family or friends, you look at the Realism and quickly get back to the conversation. Realism for smartphone addicts is equivalent to nicotine gum for smokers. Creating the right environment doesn't have to completely eliminate the source of addiction. In today's world, this is impossible. Only eliminating the irritants is enough. The main cause of social media addiction is numbers, the number of likes, comments, friends. This forms in our minds a sense of social importance or frustrating. Programmer Benjamin Grosser has developed a program called the Demetricator. The program removes all quantitative metrics, leaving only the mere fact that, for example, people like your post, no matter how many. But what if you use the source of addiction to your advantage? After all the psychological levers that contribute to addiction can help us make our lives better. Living a healthy lifestyle, balancing work and rest, saving for retirement. However, to change your bad habits into healthy ones, willpower alone is not enough. At this point, it's worth remembering the elements of the game. Most people will be more willing to do something if it is fun and interesting. In 2009, the Swedish advertising agency DDB developed a series of promotions in Stockholm under the slogan "Play can change people's behavior for the better." One of the promotions took place in the city center at the entrance to the subway. To get to the subway, you could either take the stairs or the escalator. People naturally chose the escalator, even if it was crowded. One night, agency workers redesigned the stairs, turning them into an electronic piano. Each step became a key and made a loud sound when pressed. These sounds formed a melody when someone climbed the stairs. The experiment showed that about 66% of people who started using the stairs changed their behavior after adding game elements to it. Adding game elements to the process is called gamification. Creators of computer fitness programs actively use this tool, offering various mini rewards if you run 5 kilometers, get a virtual medal, or compare your results with your friends in the leaderboard. The main goal of gamification is to motivate people in areas where laziness usually prevails. Motivation systems at work are built according to a similar scheme. Instead of medals, new positions; instead of points, bonus system. Most corporate trainings are also built on the principle of a game. However, just as technology is not a priori bad or good, gamification is also ambiguous. When adding a game element, it is easy to forget, for example, that physical exercise is about being healthy, not about the game itself. It's important to recognize and use gamification wisely. Conclusion: behavior addiction is a fairly young phenomenon, but the speed at which it is gaining momentum and spreading makes you wonder. It is becoming critical to understand the causes and ways in which behavioral addictions occur, and methods of dealing with them. Chemical and non-chemical behavioral addictions have common features. They stimulate the same parts of the brain that are responsible for short-term pleasure and temporarily solve many psychological problems, despite the fact that in the long run they usually lead to unfortunate consequences. Complete disregard for natural lifestyle, work, loved ones, hygiene, and healthy socialization. Behavioral addictions are formed by a number of tools: goals, feedback, progress, progression, progressively harder tasks, plot intrigue that keeps the viewer engaged, and strong social bonds. Many of the behavioral addictions that exist include at least one of these. By understanding the mechanism of their work, you can timely recognize this or that tool in your app or a new TV series and treat its use consciously and cautiously. You can also use these very tools to form healthy habits, giving control of the process back to yourself. Whatever the case, every addiction has both a beginning and an end, and it's only your choice to bite the hook or move past it. Being conscious of any device and understanding the true values is the basis for healthy choices. Thank you all for listening to the end. If you liked it, don't forget to rate and subscribe to the channel. You can buy the full version of the book at the link in the description.